G'day, everybody. Welcome to our channel, Scientology, Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and it is a good day. I'm here with Janice Gillum-Grady. And Janice, you can go ahead and get started.
Okay.
How you doing?
Well,
and why is this a good day?
Good day, everybody, and good day, Mark. And yes, today is a good day because look, I am wearing my Australian sweatshirt.
Oh, wow.
Because our guest today is from Australia, and he is now 89 years old. And as he would say, he's known me since I was a squirt. And he got into Scientology in 1963. And so we're going to do an interview with him. And it's going to be a lot of fun. He's a character. So be prepared and hang on to your seat and be ready for some laughs and interesting stories.
Great. Well, yeah, and he trained up to be a Class 8 auditor on the Apollo, and he's got a long history and stories to tell. And we're actually taping this. He's actually going to be streaming with us from Australia, which is kind of cool. We're here in Las Vegas, so anyway,
Yep.
we're glad to be here. Why don't you go ahead and introduce him?
Yep. So let's bring on Barry Stephenson.
Good day, Barry.
Greetings from down under.
Right.
Or if there was the map, there's a map of the world I remember they used to have when we were in management where the globe was turned the other way around so that Australia was at the top of the world.
That was my map in my office.
Well, because people don't understand, we walk upside down here.
Right. So good to have you on, Barry. So let's start with, how did you get into Scientology?
Well, it's very simple. I just saw an ad in the paper and it said, how would you like to know your IQ and personality analysis? And I'd always been interested in my IQ. I didn't know what it was. So I thought I'd like to know. So I went down and I did the IQ test and that personality analysis. And although my attention was originally on the IQ, which turned out to be 132, by the way, the personality analysis was spot on.
Oh.
And I went, whoa, these people really know what they're doing. I said, what is this thing, Scientology? Catch your throat. I was in.
Now, this was in Sydney, right?
Yeah. So I did the PE course and got some stable datums that made a lot of sense to me. They didn't have a comm course in those days. The next step was the HBA course. It was a big jump. They needed something in between, but they didn't have it at that time. Well, it took me about 12 months to decide to do the HBA course, but I used to come into Sydney Org on the Saturday morning, and George Edwards used to play one of Ron's tapes that was suitable for the public, and at the end of 12 months, I remember Ollie Lind, who was I think he was a registrar plus several other hats. He said, Barry, if you really want to do it, you'll find the money. He was right.
And what were you doing? What was your profession at that time?
Well, I was working for Qantas at the time. And I was in a production department that was part of operations. And I had 3 women working for me, young women, one older one, 2 young ones. And they were detailed drafts women because we were drawing all kinds of things. Aircraft let-down charts and Loran charts and designing forms, you name it, our production department. And they put me as head of it. But I had not done any training as a draftsman, but I could do it as good as them, just my ability. Well, they didn't like me very much. But anyway, I had accumulated about 6 weeks leave. And when I bought the HPA course, I took the 6 weeks straight.
Ah, okay.
Well, that was good because I got some real good reality on the reactive mind right there, because I turned on a cold, I think the second day, streaming sinuses. So I said to the supervisor, I got to go home. I've got a cold. He said, oh, bullshit, you're not going home. He said, go back and reread that stuff. Something stirred you up. I went back and found it. The cold turned off.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh, there's a win for you.
Yeah.
Then when they were running the upper induct TRs, they made me run it. But I got the gain.
Did your PC get the gain as
I
well?
don't know. It wasn't a PC. It was training drill. But
Oh, okay.
they say, look at that book, walk over to it, pick it up.
Yeah, book and bottle.
I had no trouble saying for about 5 minutes. And then suddenly some of the machinery cracked up, and I was going, look at that book. I couldn't get the words out. My mental machinery on it screwed up. Anyway, blew that right, and I was supposed to be the one running it. Anyway, the other thing was a cyst, and I had a wisdom tooth that was giving me trouble at the time. And one night it was really killing me, and I thought, I got to give it an assist. But because you say, feel my hand for headaches and things like that, how do you do it for a toothache? Well, no one had told me, so I thought I had to go into my mouth and touch the tooth.
Okay. So
I took the plastic toothbrush and stuck it in. Holy shit, do you think that didn't hurt? I said, well, I've got to do it. And I did it for about 4 commands, and I snapped. The fucking thing left me like so fast. I almost heard a snap, mental snap. Was gone, totally gone. And I've never had a toothache since.
Wow.
Never had one since.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was great. Now, see, when you get wins like this early on, you're hooked, pal.
Yeah. Well, that was like my parents. They had wins like that, and they got hooked. Now, did you know Roger Buswava while you were in Sydney?
No. I knew Martin Bentley. I knew Dennis Stevens. Well, you probably don't know Peter Sparshot.
No.
When my wife was, when we were living together before we got married, she would get out of bed and kind of bounce off the wall and bump into the chair, and like she's so much out of present time she couldn't navigate through the room. And I said, I'm going to run you on CCHs. And she said, okay. So we're in the org running CCHs, and Peter comes in. He was the supervisor at the time. He came in, he saw me, and he went away, and he came back with 5 or 6 staff members. And later on I said, what was that all about? He said, I wanted them to see how it should be run.
Oh. And this is after you'd done the HPA course.
I hadn't. Well, I don't know if I'd finished or not. But Joyce was on the HQS course, see? So,
okay.
Well, somehow I got permission to do it. I don't remember the details on that. I just remember Peter bringing 5 people in to watch. I don't see that it was difficult to do, but somehow or other, Peter thought somebody should have a look at it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway.
This was in 1963, early 60s?
I graduated the HBA course early in 65. Yes, early 65, because I didn't start until 64. And then after that 6 weeks, I went on weekends.
Okay.
Just weekends, Saturday, Sunday. Now, I got to tell you, that was fun. And when Hubbard used to say, if it ain't fun, it ain't Scientology, they were the good days, because that was before it became regimented, and the attitude was, if it's not true for you, it's not true.
Right.
there was a lot of stuff that wasn't true for me at that time, which of course later on I realized was. But the attitude was you don't have to eat it. Here, now, today, you got to eat it, whether you like it or not, see?
Yeah.
And that, of course, then it's no longer fun.
Right.
So anyway,
And this was before Keeping Scientology Working came out, right, Janice?
oh
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah, this is way
Well,
before that, where Hubbard says, I'm the only source and I'm the only one, or whatever. I mean,
well, that always
that didn't
bugged me
exist.
too, see? Because it's not the only source, and we know that.
Yeah.
Anyway, the thing is, when I graduated from the briefing course, not the HPA course,
Okay.
they wanted me to audit in the HEC. Well, I was a little bit nervous because you're a brand new student, and here you're going to begin handling the public. Well, the first person they give me was a guy who had a massive present time problem. He was in love with a woman who had 2 children, and she was absolutely gorgeous. And he had his balls in his mouth. he couldn't help himself. And the family recognized that she was after his money, and they were trying to dissuade him. And his boss was trying to dissuade him, and his brothers were trying to dissuade him. Everybody was coming down on him, and he had this massive present time problem. They told me, run communication courses on him. I couldn't get past this present time problem in the rudiments. I couldn't run anything on him until I got rid of this present time, and it was massive.
Right.
So I thought, what am I going to do? And there was no CSing in those days. And the director of processing had told me to run communication courses. So I thought, well, I'm going to take the communication commands. And instead of saying, if you could talk to a policeman, what would you talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you could talk to a father, what could you talk about? I put the terminals of the present time problem into the question. I said, if you could talk to your father, what would you talk about?
Right.
If you could talk to your mother, what would you talk about? If you talk to your brother. And that way, it took 5 or 6 hours. We blew the present time problem. He saw what was going on, and he was so happy. He invited me to a party a few weeks later. Anyway,
Okay.
Did he ever get married to the woman?
no.
With the 2 kids?
He recognized. He finally was able to see what was going on.
So you blew
Good.
her out of the picture. That's good.
and with a very simple process.
And he was so happy. And I thought I'd altered the process. I changed it so I didn't tell anybody. But I realize now it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, at the time, if I'd have told anybody, they would have said, you've been squirreling. Well, of course, I see the truth was I just used my judgment. And my judgment has been working for me for a long time in Scientology, because after that, I realized Hubbard's regimented, you must not change this one iota or else, was bullshit. So I wasn't caught up in that part of it. And your mother saved my ass down at Flag when your father had sent me down to do the seminar training course. He shouldn't have sent me down there, because you go down to Flag and they want to teach you how to do seminars with thousands of people. Your father only wanted to learn how to get the hot button in a group of people so he could form a seminar around it.
Right.
And the formula that I learned on the course was perfect for that. But the rest of it was superfluous and not necessary. But they made me do the whole bloody thing. And of course, the founding Scientologist Reunion was on in Sydney at that time, and I wanted to get back in time for it, because being a founding Scientologist. And when it came to the very last item on the check sheet, it was to put all the terminals and people involved in one of these massive seminars, a clay table demo that took 2 tables and 2 buckets full of clay and 2 days to do. And I missed the Scientology reunion. I was pissed off. I was ARC broken. And the supervisor He was just, you must do it. The book says you do it. You do it. No judgment. See, no judgment. I said, I don't need to do it. I've been drawing all my life. I can draw the whole thing for you, show you that I understand it. I don't need to do the clay table. Yes, you do. You have to do the clay table. Pissed me off. I missed the founding Scientologist reunion.
And my dad probably sent you there to do it so he didn't have to do it.
Well, he paid for it.
Yeah. So that you got the knowledge and brought it back to him, and that way he didn't get sucked into Flag.
Well, the problem was I no sooner got back and started to work it. By the way, that formula that they figured out on how to get the hot button was terrific, because Peter's girlfriend was Kay Gonsolin at the time. Do you remember her?
Yeah,
well,
I remember Kay.
She was at Flag too for something, and she let me have her car, and I drove over to a big mall about 5 miles from Clearwater, and I stood in the entrance with a clipboard and a white t-shirt, short sleeve shirt with a tie on, and I asked people, do you mind if I ask you a few questions for Hubbard Research Foundation? And then I'd ask these questions, and I put it all together as per the formula and come up with a hot button. And it worked great.
Can you explain for our viewers what a hot button is? What is a hot button? What does that mean?
Well, it's what people want, what they really want.
In other words, you're finding out what they really want. Like how can
but
you
not
approach
as an individual, as a third dynamic, a small third dynamic. You find out exactly. Like one of them I did was for inventors. Okay, well that was a simple one because what they wanted was finance, someone to finance it. That was a simple one. But some of the ones we did down in Flag were much more complex, but we still got the hot button. Well, anyway, I no sooner got back, and he bought Hubbard Naturals. He bought the health food store. And then he asked me would I manage it until he could get someone to take it over. And I said, sure, as long as it's not forever. And he said, no, that'd be fine.
Where was this at?
Hobre's health food store was basically a closet at Celebrity Center, I believe, down on 8th Street. And she sold vitamins to Scientologists. And then my dad ended up buying it and turning it from Hobre's into Peter Gillam's.
That's
and
right.
then he set it, and when the complex was purchased, he set it up right next to the complex in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Well, see, the original shop is not the shop he's in now. He's moved up. I think I've moved up 1 or 2 stores to the left, probably because there's more space, I imagine, because this original shop was pretty small.
On Catalina. It was on Catalina and Fountain. Yeah.
Yeah, Catalina and Fountain.
Los Angeles, California. Mm-hmm.
The store was about 3 stores from the corner of Catalina. Now, those other 3 stores were all boarded up. There was no business going on in those stores at that time. Hubbard Naturals was the only one. And next to that, there was, I don't know, realty company. I don't remember now, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, coming back to HPA course.
Yeah.
I was doing rehabs on people and auditing in the HGC on weekends. And I was doing fine. Everything was running fine. There was no difficulty whatsoever. And I got nice and comfortable and relaxed about the whole thing. So I would, meanwhile at Qantas, after I'd come back from the 6 weeks course on the HBA course, when I came back to work at Qantas, the girls who didn't like me, because I used to give them the difficult jobs and the dirty jobs, and I'd keep the good jobs, see, because I was the boss.
Right.
I came back from the HBA course and I gave them the good jobs, and I took the dirty jobs.
Oh.
Next thing that happened, all the backlog was finished in about 2 months. Well, do you think that didn't get the attention of the seniors? And next thing you know, they call me up and they say, well, you're on a dead-end job down there. There's nowhere you can go from there. I said, yeah, I know. And I'd been with the company 13 years. See,
This is Qantas, right? Qantas.
I
Right.
started when I was 15. So they offered me a choice of 3 different jobs. Now, I don't remember the other 2, but the one I chose was to roster flight crew for their license renewal training. Well, they said, well, that's the most difficult job, and it requires a lot of knowledge of the Department of Civil Aviation regulations. And you don't know them. I said, no, but I can learn like anybody else. Well, they let me do the job, but they said you'll be on probation for a whole year.
Whoa.
Now, who would do that today? Who'd be on probation for a whole bloody year? I said, well, what about De Niro, you know? And they said, well, your salary will be raised accordingly. Well, I should have said to them, would you please define accordingly?
You didn't?
Well, I was young and stupid in those days. I mean, not so smart. So what happened was I took the job over. The fellow doing the job before me was taking 9 hours a day. Well, after 4 weeks training, I had 17 foolscap pages of notes. Give you an idea how complex this job was. My terms of reference started with A, and the last action was labeled R. That's 19 different actions that had to be done every month. Some of them daily, some of them every 2 days, but all of them had to be done in a month. Well, at first, it took me 9 hours a day, like the fella I took over from, because you get in an hour early before 9 o'clock and get some paperwork done before the phones start ringing. Well, when I took over, it took me 9 hours a day for the first couple of weeks. I went home with a headache because I'd be going, well, I had to look at my notes and say, oh, yeah. And, you know, it was pretty rough.
Right.
But then I remembered Hubbard saying, a telephone is a terrible distraction. You're focusing on something and the bloody telephone rings and it breaks your attention, everything going to answer the phone. And Qantas had a lovely, well-designed 2 deliveries of inter-office mail per day. So when people call up, I say, hey, Jim, is this important? I say, what do you mean? I said, it's important because, is it urgent? Because if it's not, put it in the inter-office mail. And I said, well, it's not urgent. I said, then put it in the inter-office mail, hang up. Well, that soon,
Your dev T, develop traffic.
the phone stopped ringing and I had that extra time. The next thing you know, over the next 4 months, I squeezed in into 6 hours a day. Now, mind you, it wasn't just the phone. I made a checklist of actions, and as I completed them, cross them off, as new ones came and added on. And at the end of the day, I'd make up a new list before I went home. So in the morning, I didn't scratch my ass and say, I wonder what I'm going to do now. I look at the list and say, what can I do right now? And do it and cross it off. All of a sudden, I got it to 6 hours a day. At that time, Qantas was taking in the Boeing 707s, and they were training flight crew and recruiting them from around the world to come and fly the Boeing 707s. So we were stepping up to the increased work, not so much me, but the fellow next to me, to a point where he couldn't handle the DC-4 aircraft, and they asked me, would I handle it? And I said, what's in it for me? And I said, your salary will adjust at the end of the year accordingly.
Okay, good.
Okay, I said, I'll do it. I took it back to 8 hours a day, but within 3 months, it was back to 6 hours. Now here's where Scientology comes in. Apart from the fact that got the telephone people off the phone, I kept a checklist. I also inadvertently had memorized all the training exercises the pilots that were under my control had done. I had 2 filing cabinets behind me with 3 drawers each full of pilots' names. And I'd be doing the roster and I'd say, Captain Smithwell, oh, I think he did exercise D. And I'd get up and look and say, oh, yeah, exercise D. Oh, Beresford, I think he did exercise E. And I'd get up and look and say, oh, yeah, wait a minute. I already know. I don't have to get up. That's how I could squeeze in the 6 hours a day. Well, he came to me and they wanted me to take the DC-4 off the fella next to me because he couldn't handle the Boeing and the DC-4. So I took it and I got it in the 6 hours a day. And no errors were coming out of my area at all. None. And it was running as smooth as silk. You know how much they gave me at the end of the year? $1.
What? $1? And now how do you credit this to Scientology?
Well, because first off, all the actions I took to streamline it, and the fact that when you learn axioms 1 to 58, you don't have any trouble remembering anything.
That's right. Oh, I remember my mother practicing verbatim. She had to know all the axioms and the factors, and that's right.
I did a course where I did a course where I had to clay demo every one of them, and it stayed with me, you know. Anyway.
Oh, that would have been the better way to go. But when I did it, it wasn't required in clay. But by the way, clay table auditing came in when I was on the HBA course. Clay table auditing. Now you don't hear of that, do you?
No, you don't.
Let me ask you though, Janice. You mentioned how did Scientology? What you're telling me, Barry, sounds very much like Hubbard's book, The Problems of Work. Do you know what I mean? In terms of like, you basically got rid of all the phone calls, which when I was studying, you know, as a staff member years later, it was like, we called it developed traffic. It was like somebody constantly interrupting you. You can't get done what you're planning on doing on your checklist each day. So you're like, put it in writing. I'll get to it later. And so you were able to take 9 hours and trim it down to 6 hours, you know? And then also the thing too, that we learned, and it's not necessarily Scientology, but Hubbard said that when you start something, you want to finish it. You don't want to like leave lots of different things going at the same time because you get distracted and you don't finish anything. So these were all things that I remember reading about in the book Problems of Work.
Well, at the whole time I was working in the flight training division, I had an SP right behind me. It's all right. I recognize it straight off, but that's another story. The thing was being able to memorize without trying to memorize all those pilots' training programs made it easy to get it all done in 6 hours. And the boss would come out and say, "What are you doing? Sitting there doing nothing?" And I'd say, "It's all done, Bruce." And he'd say, "What about this?" "Done, done, done, done." "Oh, okay, we'll sit there and look busy." I said, "Hey, I finished my bloody work. What do I have to look busy for?" There was a stupid attitude they had at that time. Right. But when I went to him and I said, "Bruce, what's this $1?" Well, that was 10 shillings in those days, you know. The fella before me, I took over from, was getting 30 quid a week. Okay, 30 pounds a week. And I was earning 25. To me, accordingly, would have been 30 pounds a week.
Exactly.
So I said, "Well, Bruce, this is not enough." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "It's not enough. It's an insult." And he said, "Well, that's all you're getting." Well, you know what? We have to thank him for that. Because I said, "Oh, they think they've got," I was there 14 and a half years. "They think they got a lifetime employee."
Right.
I'm out of here. So I plan to leave.
So is that how you ended up at St. Hill in 66?
Exactly. Did me a favor. So I went home and I said to Joyce, "I got a good mind to quit and go to St. Hill." She said, "Well, let's do it." Well, by quitting there at that particular point, not only did I get the money I'd paid into the pension plan, Qantas paid double. And I got their double as well as mine back. And that's what took me to St. Hill.
Oh, you got all that money.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, before we get to St. Hill, how did you meet Peter and Janice's mother, Yvonne? Peter and Yvonne, her father and mother.
No, I met
at St. Hill, not in Australia. Okay,
Yeah.
Go ahead. Then carry on. You went to St. Hill in England from Australia.
Yeah, when I said your mother saved my ass, I was down there at Flag. We were sitting here having lunch, and there's a young kid at the table, and he said, "Oh, my bloody thumb is killing me. Thumb's killing me." And I said, "Why don't you give yourself a touch assist?" He said, "Oh, can you do that?" "Sure." I said, "Give yourself a touch assist." "How do you do it?" And I said, "Oh, just take a pen." I said, "And close your eyes and just move around like that." And So he comes down to dinner and he says, "Oh," he says, that touch assist worked real good, Barry. He said, "Oh, it was wonderful." And someone said to him, "Well, how did you do it?" And he said, "I used a pen, but it sounded to this person like a pin." And so he rushes up to the Master at Arms, and I'm on the carpet. And they said, "Where did you get this information about giving yourself a touch assist?" "Well, I don't remember where I get my information from. It's my data. I picked it up somewhere." In those days, you didn't have to quote the HCOB of the 2nd of December, 1942. It was mine. See, it was here. And they said, "Well, you're off course." Now, don't forget, I'm down there for seminars. "You're off course until you find it." I could be there 3 years looking through PABs. And your mother stepped in. She said, "Oh, I remember. That was a PAB on December or September of 1957.
Yeah.
I was off. I'm back on course.
Because I remember.
I bumped into the hall later on. She said, "That was a bunch of bullshit."
Well, she used to do it. I remember she would give herself a touch assist with a pen.
Yeah.
A PAB, for our viewers, a PAB stands for Professional Auditors Bulletin.
Yeah,
and it was before the Hubbard Communications Office.
I was in the 50s.
Yeah.
Anyway,
PABs.
We're coming back to Hubbard and how his precision his demand for precision, only the way he said it, was not true. When I was a stockbroker in Beverly Hills, I called up a client of mine. She worked for Continental Airlines. And I said, "Joan, I've got an idea I'd like to tell you about." She said, "Oh, Barry, I can't talk to you. I got a migraine coming on." I said, "What, it's just starting?" She said, "Yeah, I'm getting those flashes of light." And I said, "Well, have you taken anything for it yet?" She said, "No." I said, "Would you like me to help you with it?" She said, "Oh, what can you do?" I said, "Oh, I know a few things." And she said, "Well, okay." I said, "What hand are you holding the phone with?" She said, "My left hand." I said, "Good. Well, take the number one finger with your right hand and trace the outline of the headache with your finger." She said, "Huh?" "Well, trace out." I said, "Trace the point between where it's not hurting and it's hurting, and trace the outline of the headache, see? And just let me know when you've done it." So a couple of seconds later, she said, "Uh-huh." I said, "Good." There's the acknowledgement. I said, "Okay, now close your eyes, have a look. What color is it?" "Color?" I said, "Well, if I had a color, what color would it be?" Well, you see what's happening, don't you? She's looking at the headache. So I did the book and bottle, color, temperature, and how thick it was. I ran 4 commands and blew the bloody headache, and she was so ecstatic.
Did she buy stock?
She wanted me to run this on some friend of hers who gets headaches all the time. I said, "Hey, I'm a stockbroker. I'm just helping you out." So you see how the knowledge of what you're doing with the touch assist can be applied in different ways, right?
Right.
And I knew it was done on the phone.
Yeah.
Now, if you'd have told anybody at St. Hill, they would have dragged you off to the Master at Arms office and put you in a condition of scunge.
Yep, that's right. Well, squirrel.
Well, of course, at St. Hill, see, I was terribly lucky. I attribute all my longevity and the fact that I'm still bright as a button to Scientology and to Ron. And I'm glad that I came the way I did and not on the bridge. Now, that might sound a bit strange, but you see, I think I was incredibly lucky to have gotten trained when I did, got to St. Hill when I did, and got stuck on the staff review officer's post when I did. Because that was the most valuable auditing you could have done. It was listening and nulling every day.
Right.
And I never missed an item, and I never thought anything of it until they got to the ship, and Hubbard said, "Listening and nulling is the only way you can really screw up a case." And I never listed and nulled again after that. Well, I never needed to, really.
Right.
But I never missed an item, but I never thought anything of it. See, now, of course, after I got out away from the church, I never got what do you call them? The various flows, like
Oh
first.
yeah, the first, yeah, third flow.
This is all one flow
Yeah,
auditing,
the flows. Yeah.
and it worked fine. Okay, it worked fine most of the time. Now, perhaps with some people, it might be better to do multi-flows. Maybe some people don't need it.
Right.
Because I blew the problems process on one question in Sydney. When they said, tell me a problem, and I told them, no, give me an overt, tell me an overt, and I told them. And they said, why wasn't it an overt? And I said it was. That was the end of it.
Hey, I want to mention, I just want to explain something briefly for our viewers. Listing and nulling, we've talked about some of the stuff in our auditing videos with Trey Lotz and with Bruce Hines. But listing and nulling is basically reading off a list of items, like I'm trying to make this simple for them, Barry. It's reading off a list of items and noting the reads from the meter, right? And you're trying to find the item that you're going to run. And that's listing down the thing, find the item. And that's what you're saying. You always find the right item, because if you find the wrong item and you run it, it's bad for the person. Am I right? Did I do that well or no?
Very bad. But
okay.
But I can't see how. See, when I got the Class 8 course, I got to tell you, at least half of them shouldn't have been there.
Right.
They were not trained up, and they weren't experienced enough to be there, because they kept throwing them overboard for making gross auditing errors. You know, they kept throwing them.
Yeah, the Class 8
I didn't get thrown overboard.
You didn't get thrown over?
No, ma'am. I was one of only 3 that didn't get thrown over.
My mother went over.
Oh, that must have been later. She wasn't on the course. She wasn't on the course with me. No, what happened was Ron had, see, every evening after dinner, he'd talk from about 7:30 until 10:30 or something.
Yeah.
If you doped off in his lecture, you got chucked over the side. That's another thing. But anyway,
this is on the Apollo for everybody there. It's in the 1960s and 70s.
The harbour master got pissed off and told him to stop throwing people overboard.
It was 1968, I think it was.
Yeah, it was. In October 1968. So anyway, well, I was lucky, because the person I was teamed up with was called Anne Glushico. I don't know if you ever heard of her.
I remember her.
I remember Anne.
Yep. I remember her.
Anne was such a clean human being, and I was too, that she had no trouble running me, and I had no trouble running her. And we ran everything to N phenomena without any trouble whatsoever. And the first time the first time I had to audit, there was no trouble at all. Anyway, that's another story. But
right,
what I was saying was.
Go ahead, Janice. Explain the Class 8 course. Is that what you were going to say before about the overboarding?
The listing and nulling that I was doing was called a disagreements check. And if a person's stats were going up and then suddenly they start going down, I'd go and grab them, put them into session, and give them a disagreements check to find out what the problem was. And the disagreements check was, you just make a little assessment, staff, policy, fellow employees, whatever, 5 or 6 items, and you assess it. One reads, you take it up and say, what is it about that? And then all their answers are listed, and that's the one that's the listing. And then you call that out one at a time. The one with the biggest read, you take up on your 2-way comment. And if you don't get the end phenomena, you ask for an earlier similar. Off they go down the time track, all over the bloody universe. I got to tell you that I had people doing things that certainly not real to me. But they walked out of there 3 feet off the ground, happy as a lark. And I was handling 8 to 10 people a day.
Wow.
Now, see, what I was supposed to do was, when the session was finished, I was supposed to take the pre-clear up to qual, to the examiner, and then go back to my office. But qual was in the new castle on top of the hill. And my
This is at St. Hill. At St. Hill.
Yeah, this is you're back at St. Hill now.
Yep, we're back at St. Hill.
Okay.
My little auditing room was down the bottom where all the buildings were, and the new castle was up on the hill. Well, that's about 250-yard walk. See? So instead of walking up with them, I'd roll up the auditor's report form and stick it in their hand and say, "Don't look at it. Take yourself to Qual." See the time I'm saving? See the time? Just like I did at Qantas, I sped
Saved
up the
your time.
and I have the next one in my session. And I was able to, usually these things only lasted 5 minutes, you know, some of them not even that long. And
Right.
so I was happy that Otto took me off the level 7 course because I was training in a level 7 to run power. And,
Right.
and well, he first off, he put me in the cashier's post.
Now, was this before you did the 8 course at the ship, or
This is
after
before
you came back? Yeah, but
jumping
before
all
the
over
ship.
the place. I understand. This is
Yeah.
before the ship. This is before the ship.
Okay.
You see,
All right. Well, let's just go to St. Hill. So you left Australia after you quit Qantas and you'd finished your HPA and you went over to St. Hill. And I think that was 66 because that's when I remember you, because you used to take my brother rabbit hunting.
we took him rabbit hunting in England.
Yes.
Yeah, at St. Hill.
Oh, well, that's why I didn't remember it. I'm trying to think of where we took him rabbit hunting. Of course, it had to be England, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember Janice and Peter as young children?
Well, the hunting in England was pretty poor. I mean,
right. You and Malcolm used to take
Malcolm
Peter
had a
hunting.
12-gauge shotgun. I had an air rifle.
Yeah,
Anyway,
and then
Malcolm who?
Malcolm Neeman, and Peter would come home with these rabbit skins. He'd skin the rabbit, and I would save the rabbit skins because I was going to make a fur coat for my mother.
And this is Peter Jr. This is Pete Janice's brother, not the father.
Yeah.
Oh, I know who it is.
I know our viewers. I'm talking to our viewers.
Yeah.
I bid him up the mountains down in California.
Yeah, no, Peter was 13 years old when you and Malcolm would take him shooting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, the thing is, after I finished when I was on the briefing course, and I got up to level 4, and Ron had changed the policy, and you now had to pay for power. When we left Australia, we were told we could co-audit power on the level 7 course.
Oh, okay.
But he changed the policy, and I didn't have the money for it. I'd had enough money for accommodation and food and everything for a year, but I didn't have enough money for that. So we asked Sydney for the money, and they never replied. They didn't have the money, but they didn't have the courtesy of saying, "Sorry, we can't do it." They just didn't reply. So Mary Sue got involved, and she telexed them. They didn't reply to her either. So she came to us and said, "If you sign a contract with St. Hill, we'll give you power now. And when you finish the briefing course, you work for us for 2.5 years." I said, "What could we do? We're stuck."
Yeah.
I couldn't complete the briefing course because I had to have power, because after that you do R6EW. So we signed.
As staff at St. Hill.
Yeah.
Let me ask you. I want to ask.
Then we got
what
power.
year? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Like I say,
have a question for you when you're done.
Finished R6EW, and then we went on staff.
Right.
I want to ask you a question. When you went and did the briefing course at St. Hill, this was in 65, 66. When was this?
It was November 65 we started, late.
My question for you was, when you were there, was LRH giving actually the briefing course lectures then? Like, were you on the original? Because
every day.
So you were there when he would give the lectures in the chapel or whatever to the briefing course students?
Every day.
Okay, great. I was wondering, what was that like? Can you explain to us what that was like?
Well, we didn't think anything of it at the time, but looking back, it was pretty good. He did that until he went to Rhodesia.
Mm-hmm.
And so well, it took me from November 65 until towards the end of 66, I think, before we finished the briefing course, because I was not in a hurry. Well, Margaret Chalmers, I know,
is on the left.
I know the fellow holding the beer above his head, I don't remember his name, or the lady either, next to him.
Okay.
Of course, Lisa Zander, then Fran Deutsch, and myself.
Right.
Okay.
Now, Lisa Zander, is that later Lisa Gerber?
I don't know, but she was a model in New York before she got into Scientology.
Yeah, okay.
And you guys were all on this briefing course together in St. Hill.
Well, I don't know I don't remember where she was in the briefing course, but she was there somewhere.
Yeah, Lisa became an auditor on the ship and at Flag. And Fran Deutsch was on the 8 course with you. And she was on the ship when I arrived.
She wasn't on the briefing course. Fran Deutsch had just arrived with a brother.
Right, Bill.
And I don't know what she was doing, actually.
Oh, I thought she was training. Maybe it was just Bill was doing the Class 8 course.
She might have been starting the briefing course, but at that particular point, we're getting towards either I've graduated, or I think I've graduated the briefing course at that point, and was driving buses for Cal Whitney out of the Apsley Arms Hotel. That's the Apsley Arms Hotel that you see there. That's a 15th century hotel.
Yeah, well, Cal and Val Whitney also owned the house on St. James's Road that we lived in. They owned a bunch of places.
Oh, you're in St. James's Road too, eh?
Yeah. Well, that's where you'd come get Peter and take him hunting. Was it St. James's Road?
I've forgotten about that. I remember St. James's Road, but I didn't remember who was there, except Don Ryburn from New Zealand, because he audited kids, like 10, 12-year-old kid. He kept overrunning them. And he'd come up and say, will you check this kid? I think I've overrun him. And I'd go down and I say to the kid, was there any point in that session you felt good? And they'd look and you see the needle go, and I say, yeah, that. And they go, oh, yeah, there it is. I say, yeah, you're right. And he says, shit, you only take 3 seconds.
At that age, I was getting audited at that time by James Byrne.
Well, James Byrne and I were at loggerheads on the briefing course. He and I were matched up. You want to hear the story?
Sure.
James Byrne, we all know James Byrne for different reasons, but yeah, we all, go ahead and tell the story.
Well, we're doing the CCH training backwards and forwards from wall to wall, and suddenly he'd duck and run away and say, flunk, you didn't stop me. And a pre-clear is not going to really do that in life. I mean, after all, they come to you for auditing. What are they doing playing silly games? They wouldn't be, but he was, because instead of training properly, he was turned it into a stupid game. And I thought, well, all right, you want to play silly games? So the next time, this winter time, he's got a sweater on, okay? The next time he ducks, I grabbed his sweater. And he said, geez, you nearly tore my sweater off. Stopped him from running away. No, but when we had to do the whole track dating drill, he demanded absolute bloody perfection.
Right.
We were on that drill for 3 weeks.
Wow. Well, I mean, I did enjoy his auditing, and I knew him for years up until I left. I don't know if he's still alive or not, but he was still in the Sea Org several years ago.
James, how old were you when you were getting auditing from James at St. Hill? How old were you then?
I was 10.
Wow.
Yeah, he did my grades.
Wow.
Yeah, James was a good auditor, but when it came to training, he was, when he'd say, flunk, you did such and such, he'd say, God damn it, you did it again. Oh, absolutely wrong kind of coaching, right? And all it did was piss me off, and I'd rage against it. And so onward it would go, onward it would go, onward it would go. And then after 3 weeks, he flanked me for some little thing, and he said, yeah, you're going on. And I looked at him and I said, James, I'm ready for a checkout. Anyway, to his credit, he said, I think you are. Here comes Malcolm Chamonix over. I did the whole tuck grading drill with 4-inch reeds. And Malcolm Chamonix says, I've never seen one as good as that before. That's a pass. Now switch around. And James got 4-inch reeds on me, and we passed like that. But it took 3 weeks of doggedly.
Wow.
Wow, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, for our viewers, some of our viewers, they know James Byrne. He was married to Enid Byrne at AOLA, right, Janice, in Los Angeles for a long time. And then James, we know him from in the Sea Organization when we were, like you said, Janice, you knew him for years. But I mean, I know him for the very end when we left, because he was sent in on mission to the international base after the famous flood in August 1990. So anyway.
Right.
A little something on James. Well, I think when he was on the briefing course, he audited more people than anybody else. Now, when we got to level 3, I think it was, with ARC brake handling, Hubbard had made these questions related to the no to mystery scale. And you could say, was that ARC brake caused by a protest or whatever? And I thought, well, that sounded pretty professional. So I made up all these cards with the no to mystery scale questions on it that you could have right next to you at the e-meter, so you could use them. It didn't work worth a shit. It was no bloody good. It was too cumbersome and it didn't communicate. James Byrne just whipped out a list 1 and said, when was that ARC break? And went down to list 1, got that, handled it.
Yeah, he was a good auditor.
So I eventually threw that no to mystery scale 1 out and took the list 1, and after that was plain sailing. But that was one thing that didn't work. Now, I think it would have worked on experienced Scientologists, but didn't work on the public or people unless they had quite a bit of training. But but the list 1 works on anybody.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it was there for.
What's that?
I just want to bring up, before we bring this to an end, I just want to bring up this photo, and this will wrap up pretty much most of St. Hill.
Oh, what about that?
This is when you were on the briefing course, because it says briefing course student Barry Stephenson left, and Malcolm Neeman, HPA from London, spent their spare time weekends building model aircraft, under construction.
Well, I'll tell you about that. Again, do you remember when I said things were fun on the HPA course in Sydney? Yeah. Well, things were fun on the briefing course up until Hubbard came back from Rhodesia. And when he came back from Rhodesia, there was no time to be making model aircraft, because he had everybody doing 2 hours of bloody TRs every night, in addition to whatever you did during the day. There was no time to be making model aircraft anymore. So that was selling. That was selling. Coming to the briefing course, you can have a lot of fun,
Right. So, because that was in the Auditor magazine. You and Malcolm had sent that picture into the Auditor magazine, right?
I think Joyce took the picture.
Okay, and I could bet you that Hubbard was probably looking at the Auditor magazine and was like, what are these freeloaders doing? They should be on course training. They shouldn't have any time to be building model airplanes.
We did up until he came back from Rhodesia. And
exactly.
After that, do you remember Blake Huffam?
Oh, sure. Very well. Very well. Blake lived here with us in Vegas for a long time.
Well, Blake was boarding in the same house with us, with Cal and Val Wigney in Hillcrest Dormans Park. And we were doing the TRs after hours at home. And Blake would go and attend, which he'd start off and he'd say, "Oh, you ready?" I say, "Yeah, okay, start." He'd go.
Anatin's like falling asleep for our viewers.
Yeah.
Now, I could have thought, "Oh, shit," I didn't. I just sat and I confronted his unconscious body for 2 hours. I did the TRs.
Right.
Strangely enough, just about the end of the 2 hours, he'd come back and say, "How you doing?"
Had a good snooze.
Well, while you and Malcolm were building aircrafts, Blake was probably building Meccano sets.
Not at that time. He'd already done it.
Well, later on, he did it some more. After he left the Sea Org, he built more Meccano sets.
I saw it.
When when he passed away, Terry and I got a bunch of them.
Well, Blake was well-meaning, but Hubbard says all you need to do is put a mirror up against a person's face, and if there's any condensation, then they can become an auditor. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I believe you need to be, and I think you need to be just a little sharper than usual, because so many people on the briefing course got chucked over the side because they did stupid things. And I was thinking at the time, they should know better than that. How come they did that? And if they're supposed to be an experienced auditor.
Yeah.
But, I don't know if are you recording?
Yes.
Yeah, we are. We're going to wrap up the show here now.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll save the story for another day.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
People,
Well,
it gives the audience something to look forward to.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have you back again.
I'm only too pleased to tell you, because I think to myself, I've got all this experience and this knowledge, and I get no one to pass it on to. I'm
right.
A family had called Anthony Phillips up in Denmark and said, "We need somebody to train us. Who do you suggest?" And he said, "Well, you're in Australia. Why don't you go up to see Barry Stephenson in Inverell?" So they came up and saw me. Oh, they were so excited. They moved here.
Wow.
And I started training them. We were doing TRs, and we were doing it for 5 months, including upper and dock TRs. And then the husband goes and buys a 110-year-old house that is full of problems. And it was all hands on deck for 2.5 years before they got everything handled. And when it was finished, nobody wanted to come back to do their training. And I thought that was strange until another friend moved up here. He'd already got Excalibur from Ron Zorg in Switzerland.
Yep.
And he said, they think your training's old-fashioned or out of date.
The Ronzog people do.
No, this family. The husband.
Oh, okay.
Because I stopped in 1978 after I didn't get any more, except OT3 and OT3 expanded. He said my training and everything was out of date. But E-meter training and TRs are never out of date. And that is the basic auditing.
Right.
The rest of it can be learned. It can be learned. But sit there for 2 hours in front of somebody and allow them to be the way they are and not dope off or drift away, that's the part that they needed training on. So he's got a hidden standard, some kind of stupid hidden standard. And in a way I said, you know what? I'm no longer willing to train them anyway.
Anyway, we want to thank Barry for being here and doing this. We're going to have him back on and do several more shows, I'm sure, Janice. But I wanted to
lots
mention,
of stories.
It's Christmas time. We've got our product, Janice's product from Outback Natural, Koala Calm, and that was developed with you and your dad, right, Janice? Your dad? Is this your dad's formula?
Yeah.
Koala Calm? Yeah.
Yeah, he and Paul helped me with that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And this, Janice, tell everybody about this product and what it's good for.
Well, it's a magnesium product, and I have it in plain, and I have it in apple cinnamon flavor. And you heat up hot water, add the recommended amount, and then cool it off and drink it like tea. And it helps relax you. It helps your body assimilate calcium into the bones. So it's very good.
Great. So if you'd like to order it, it's on our merchandise site. There's a link down below to it. Just go ahead and click on it, but you can order it at our merchandise store, and Janice will ship it out to you. But it's definitely a product that I think a lot of people get a lot of benefit from. So we wanted to mention that there. Also, I wanted to say, please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Hit that like button, hit that notification button. It helps get the word out of what we're doing here. If you have any questions or comments about what we talked about, or any of the stories that Barry's told or anything like that, and you want to contribute, just go down below to the comment section. We read them all, and we'll take them up with him as well. And then also, if you'd like to support our channel, you can buy us a coffee. There's a link in the description. Click on that. We appreciate any support that you want to throw our way for our channel. Is there anything anybody you want to say, Barry, before we end off this video?
No, just having fun, that's all.
Good.
Absolutely. Well, we've enjoyed it very much so.
Yeah. Same here. So until next time, Barry, we're going to get you scheduled out. And until next time.
But don't hang up, Barry, because we're going to talk to you on this side. Bye-bye, everybody.